Welcome to Kevjet, the podcast. Tim
Woo!
Power. It's been a long time coming.
Well, yeah. I mean, I didn't know it was coming. That's kind of the story of my life and my career. I didn't know it was going to happen, but it happened. So that's great.
Here we are.
No, It's nice to see you. And we were having a little chat before, and I was just saying how nice it is to make time for one another and to do that. And this is actually happening. So I thank you for that. That's really kind.
Yeah, we met in Canada House actually randomly.
It's not, yeah, wild. But it's funny because that whole Canada House thing happened because when I was touring with my band, I thought, I never invite anybody from Canada House to the gigs. And so I invited, Robert and a bunch of people. And Rob came out and saw the gig and just loved it and thought it was, and then he said, "Oh, why don't you come sing the national anthem?" And I was like, because I would say of all the things to do, singing wise, that's when I get the most yips or the most nervous is when I'm doing something that's for our nation or whatever. And then also singing it partly in French as well, which is the first time for me. And I'm a vehement, advocate of both languages. I don't, even because I grew up with in Alberta where there wasn't really that option unless you were part of like a baccalaureate thing at school or whatever. You really didn't speak French. And I think it makes Canada so much better to have two. It opens up the world in such a bigger way, even though we tend to be in places where people speak fairly good English.
True. Speaking of growing up, when was the point when you knew showbiz was going to be your life? That's what you were going to do.
Oh boy, I think what happened. So I grew up in Edmonton, but I'm from further up north from Spirit River. I was born in Spirit River, lived in a little town called Wanham, lost our farm, moved down to Edmonton when I was very young. But we used to go back up for the plowing matches. Yes, people in Alberta will understand this, possibly Saskatchewan, maybe Manitoba. But I guess I entered this competition because I was in this amateur group called the Edmonton Musical Theatre, run by a lady called Dasha Goody with a dear friend of mine who ran the musical department. He's no longer with us, called Randy Mueller. And everybody wanted to go into this thing called the Youth Talent Quest, which was at Klondike Days. And they had another one at the Stampede, and the PNE had one, the CNE had one, where people would do this talent competition. You had to win your kind of local one, then you'd go into the one for the city, and then you'd go compete. And if you won the one from the city, then I think did we have a national one? Then you'd go down to Memphis, Tennessee and compete in the Youth Talent International competition. So anyway, I thought people wanted to do this and I thought I'd do that. And at the time I was dancing as a kind of an apprentice with Ballet North, which is a small company, and because I fell in love with a ballerina and I really wanted to be closer to her, and I was a punk rocker, so I basically, the word over here is blagged, but scammed some free dance classes for partnering girls. And I got into it. I got the physicality of dancing, and I didn't know I was going to be good at it. But with a lot of effort, I kind of caught up. And then I was doing the Edmonton Musical Theatre thing, so I was singing, and I just just kind of fun, recreational stuff. But I realized I had a bit of talent, so I thought I'd throw together a song and dance number. And anyway, the first ones in Edmonton, I did this Singing in the Rain, and I basically the kind of the Tommy Tune version of it, where I had a big dance break in the middle. And so I won this regional one. Then I went and did the Klondike Days one, won that one. And so I got to go to Memphis, Tennessee to compete against all these Americans. And there's, I think 3 Canadians there. And then I won that. And there's Hal Holbrook on the Dixie Carter was on the panel. And so I won a CBS screen test, 5,000 American, and they flew me to LA, and I got to audition for everybody at The Young and the Restless and everybody at CBS and hang out in LA. And then I kind of went, do you know what? Like, maybe I am good at this singing and dancing and acting thing. It gave me this, this kind of little bit of a, maybe I guess a limitless kind of feeling. And then I auditioned to go to New York, and then I got an injury. I got an injury in ballet. What the problem was, right? Here's with ballet. You sign a contract and it says no skiing, no hockey, no gymnastics, no water skiing, and everything's written down in this contract. And of course, I was skiing. So, it was not that I was playing hockey, but what Canadian doesn't play hockey, right? I'm terrible hockey player. I'll put it out there. But, and then I was doing gymnastics, and I did an over rotation on a front flip, and I went over on my ankle, and my ankle I could feel my tibia and fibula go clunk. And then I thought, oh gosh. And so I ran out. Actually, what I did is I ran to the bathroom, limped to the bathroom, put my foot in the back of the cistern, and I said, could somebody just go get me some ice from outside? So there's a big snowstorm. So they came, brought a bunch of ice. I put it in there, and I thought, that's bad. So I got it seen by, and I could, it was painful for almost 2 years after that. And I was able to dance after 3 months, but I was fired immediately from the ballet company. And they were really good friends of mine. And, they were as hard as they had to be, but it was that getting fired from that made me go, okay, what am I going to do now? And, I went, and what I did was pump gas at Domo to pay my bills. And then I went and worked at Maxwell Taylor's, which is a kind of an Earl style restaurant in kind of a TGI Friday of Canada. And I went and worked for my buddy John, who hired me to work behind as a bar porter. Not called bar porter, but what do we call them in Canada? We got a busboy, right? And then I kind of got promoted a little bit more. I never really made it to waiter, but I did set up the bar and all that stuff. And then I thought, I'm going to go forward musical theater. Once this group hits, once because I kind of had done my ballet career and and I happened to be well suited for musical theater. So moving to Toronto in 1991, I mean, that was after the Charlottetown Festival. It was the best move I could make because they were auditioning for all these shows. Then all the casting agents from New York. I mean, Stephanie Gordon was just starting out there, and now she's the biggest casting agent in one of them in certainly in Toronto. But all these people were Americans, so they got to see me when I was just fresh and really wanted it. And so I felt like in fact, I never really felt I was home until I went to New York City, which is a weird thing because people didn't care what you did there. Canada, they still kept saying, are you a dancer singer? Are you singer actor? Are you, what do you do? Are you, what's that? What's your how can we pigeonhole?
What box do you fit in?
Whereas in New York, they're like, are you good? Okay, if you're good, do it. And because I could sing and dance and act at a certain level, they're like, okay, you're good, you're in. That was it. And they were like, yeah, you can come in this room. You can come into this room and you're not going to do a disservice.
Yeah.
So, and then it started and I did all these shows. I was very lucky to do all these shows with all these other lovely Canadian friends. And then it kind of crumbled. Then it imploded, after Garth Rubinski and Ed Mervish passed away. And it's kind of kept a great profile, but I don't necessarily think it's still at the height it was then. I'm not saying it was better because obviously things are what they are, but it certainly was a great platform to start on. I never felt like every time I went to Chicago or went to New York or LA, I never felt like I was at a disadvantage because I was Canadian. I felt like, yeah, I got it. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And even if I screwed it up, we all feel up and down.
Yeah.
Regardless, of how the audition went. That's a normal thing for any actor to feel. But certainly I felt like I had a a place.
And it's brought you to many things. I mean, The Phantom in London.
That was never in a million years would I cast myself as the Phantom ever. I would have put money against myself. But somebody came to see me do chess at the English National Opera and from Cameron's and Andrew's office and said, oh, we like his stuff, so have him come in for the Phantom. And I just literally went in and thought, okay, they're auditioning for 5 shows, really, because I always tell anybody who's in the business, if you're auditioning, just go do a good audition. It doesn't matter if you don't get the role because they've got 4 other shows they're usually casting. So you could fit in there. Just do a great audition, right? So I thought, I'm just going to do a good one. My son was born at that time, and I've got 2 daughters from my previous marriage. And so I thought I'd better keep, earning because that's like what a good dad would do, right? I could just take off to Europe and abandon them all, but no, I'm not going to do that. And so I went in, and then 5 auditions later, they said, we'd like you to play the Phantom. And I said, well, I've got a tour with my band, so I need 4 months off. So that's probably not going to work. And then they said, oh, we'll make it work. Which is, I was like, what? So they had my friend David come in, and he was the Phantom for like 5 months, and I was the Phantom for 7 months, and it worked out. So it was really good. And he, and this is the thing in the business too. I like all the people at a certain level, I have no animosity towards those people because it's such a joy to watch them do their thing and know that if you just hang out long enough, you probably get a crack at doing it. And if it doesn't happen, something else is going to happen as long as you stay in the game, right?
That's
so
true.
Don't, all this, that kind of mentality started in Toronto with all my buddies who were doing the lead roles there. We all kind of sat down. We lost a good friend of ours, Marlon Brand, to a very tragic thing, and we all sat down with each other and said, "That's it, end of the game playing. Nobody, we're just going to cheer each other on." And it's so great to watch all those friends of mine that we did shows with and just still keep cheering them on.
Yeah.
Not have that kind of like, why didn't I get the role? It's such a such a bullshit moment for you inside. You're like, just like, well, now I'm going to make myself feel even worse after the.
Yeah.
This, if you hang around long enough, you tend to make stories with your friends, and that's the best. The best feeling is being able to see those people again and actually get a chance to work with them.
Yeah.
Or cheer them on. It's
Yeah.
great.
You mentioned the band, so I think we need to talk about the band. How did that come about?
So I moved to okay. So Mike and the Mechanics is the
Yeah.
band. If you don't know who the band is, and yeah, the whole thing about Mike and the Mechanics is when I first came to London, I always wanted either to move permanently to New York or to London. It was either that kind of choice to be and to start a band to start a solo career or whatever version of that musical stuff was. Anyway, I met a friend of mine, a buddy of mine called Nick. Well, actually met him through his older brother Mark. Mad Welshman, and I was just here, and the show that I was in, Peggy Sue Got Married, had two American producers, Mervishes, and then it had Paul Elliott over here and Douglas C. Walden, who were the producers. Anyway, when 9/11 happened, they had shows on Broadway, all of them closed, so they had to close us down. We stopped in September, and I remember always in the back of my mind, I thought I brought my guitar over and my bike, and I sold all my stuff in Canada and the States, and then I just kind of moved what I thought I'd need over here with a view that I was going to go back and maybe settle in either New York or Toronto. Anyway, didn't happen because of 9/11, and I decided to start a band. So I was farming around. A friend of mine, well, I met a guy who lived in Hampstead who was next door over and living in the basement. He was Tina Turner's bass player, and he said, come record some demos." So I recorded some of my songs with him just very quickly and sent them out to everybody. And another friend of mine, Darren, got back to me. And he's like, "Dude, I really like your stuff. I really like it. We got to get this recorded, and we'll get it out there and see if we can get you a solo career." And at that time, I thought, I don't know if I'm into solo career as much as I am into having a band. And then my buddy Mark said, "He's, my brother Nick knows somebody at Fulham Football Club who might be looking for a lead singer for a band." And I was like, "Okay, introduce me." So Nick and Mark introduced me to my buddy Pat Maskell, and they had a band called El Camino, which is kind of like an American style band, named after that big old half car truck type thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, they'd fired their lead singer and they're looking for somebody. They auditioned about 200 people, and then I went in to sing for the guys, and we just got on like a house on fire. So then we started that band and did a bunch of stuff they had done before and some new things, and then we renamed it Van Tramp. And then it took me 8 years to tour around every armpit known to man in the UK and elsewhere, and we got a record deal. And then when that didn't go over, we ended up opening for a bunch of bands like the Sugar Babes over here, and Newton Faulkner, and the guy Paolo Nutini opened for us, and Seasick Steve, and a bunch of other artists in the kind of London area. But I kind of got known for doing that as well as doing shows, because I was still doing shows. I did a show called Tonight's the Night with Rod Stewart. It was a Rod Stewart musical, and I was lucky enough to play the lead role in that. But that only came because I was auditioning for We'll Rock You for the Queen guys, and I got down to the very last cut. Me and a guy called James Gillan, and we went with James because the director just liked his etherealness more. He thought I was too rocky, I think, or something. And then they fired both of us and hired Tony Vincent, and who's a friend of. We're all friends now. The thing is, we're all friends now. I admire these guys immensely. But Brian and Roger never forgot me. They were just lovely people, and always till this day we're still friends because of all that stuff. And then we see each other on the circuit touring with the band stuff, and Adam Lambert and all these guys. We end up hanging out.
Yeah.
So they're nice guys. And anyway, so that band started, and then when the band failed, we didn't sell enough albums. I'm sorry, I'm turning off my son's Minecraft here. It just went on. A friend of mine who produced that album, Brian Rawlings, said, "Come down to the studio and write with a buddy of mine. I'll put you in a room and see if you can come up with songs for other people." So I thought, well, this is a great opportunity. Brian doesn't just, Brian's produced Cher, Enrique Iglesias. He's produced with Mark Taylor. Mark is the other guy, and Paul, the other guy at the studio. But there was another guy called Graham who produced Tina Turner and Kylie Minogue and everything. So Graham and I got put in a room together with another guitar player from Luther Vandross, and we were just said, well, mostly it was me and Graham, come up with a song every day. And we start at 10 o'clock in the morning, and we'd write till about 12:30. Then we'd play the song through the phone to Brian, and Brian would go, yay or nay. Producer would start it again. And so we started doing that for about 6 months. And then Mike Rutherford walked into the studio and said, and Brian knew him and said, "Hey, I want to do these tracks." And Brian went, "Ding! I think you should get Mike and the Mechanics back together. I might have a singer for you." And that just happened. And at that time, I was going through a big divorce, so I needed. Brian saw it, and he's like, "I think I need to get him working, doing something to keep his mind off stuff, and maybe we'll get a couple good songs out of it." And we were getting nibbles like from Sony and Universal and stuff like that for emerging artists. And Graham and I were very happy with the results that we were getting. And then Graham got poached. He got this call. He's like, "Hey, I just got a call to maybe go to the X Factor in America to produce it." And I was like, "Graham, go." And he was there for 12 years producing every act in the X Factor, writing, producing, and he's a great guy. But I mean, it's a strange world once you get into that world. But I was taken from the musical theater world. I put my set, okay, instead of putting my eggs in that basket now, I'm going to put them in the rock basket and see what comes out of it. And, I guess the hard reality of that is that not a lot, it's quite scary because you don't have a lot of money. You don't get paid from writing songs. You don't get paid from going and playing little clubs. You sit there kind of penniless and you have to scramble on other sides. Thank God I had a voiceover career. Thank God I could do shows and build up a little bit of money to live off of. And then, but a lot of it is trust. And so I was very, knock on wood, very trustful, and I've always landed on my feet, and I've never, there have been times of hardship, but how hard is that in the Western world, really?
Yeah.
Living off your credit cards, like how hard is that? I mean, that's such a privilege, and all the credit cards get paid off. That's what happens, and then you start again, and it's we're so lucky that people say, "Oh, we value you."
Yeah. What
You
was
are
it?
interested, but you value.
Exactly. What was it like to get back on stage?
Like, doing Phantom or from transitioning from.
From transitioning to going on tour with Mike and the Mechanics?
It was just a breath of fresh air because Mike is an established artist. He doesn't need to tour. He's done Genesis and he's done his own albums and Mike and the Mechanics for years. That really he's built up an amazing kind of life for himself. But at the heart of that is music. So it was nice to go out with somebody who wanted to make the music that we were making today hit. And then also to just do justice to those songs that people were attached to. Sat there pinching myself going, I'm on stage singing background vocals for Living Years. This is like, how did this happen? Or I'm singing All I Need Is a Miracle. Like I'm singing that now. That's me. And it was hard because the person that I replaced in the band, he'd passed away, and a lot of long-term fans had a real affinity for him. But, like I was able to explain to them, like this music is not alive unless it's done live. And his family will probably get a royalty from all this stuff. I'm not trying to be better than him. I'm just trying to keep the stuff going. Right. And they really took a heart to me, and I thought that was great. So now I'm officially, the guy, which is the rock singer in the band. And that's a really nice feeling because they're great fans. I get to meet all the Genesis fans. They're great fans. I love all that stuff. They love all that stuff. And I get to hang out with Mike's friends, and they're wonderful people, and they're really some cool cats, and also I get to be it's like when you bump into people, they no longer see me as Tim Howard, the actor. They go, "Oh yeah, he's that singer, man. And he's that guy in the band." And I get that kind of familiarity with people that I used to just completely idolize and still do, pinch myself where, you get to hang out with the guys from Foreigner, or you get to hang out with the guys from like, Slade, or, and you're like, this is cool. Or, they just go, "Oh, you're one of the guys in the band. I'm
Yeah,
not an actor anymore." But being a singer is being an actor.
definitely. I was gonna say that.
Bowie and who's the guy from Talking Heads? David Byrne. I mean, I would argue they have a real theatricality to them, and that's carried them forward.
I had
Rufus,
a great conversation.
look at Rufus Wainwright. People love his persona, love him or hate him. I love him, but I think he's got this, there's something you like to hear him spin a tale.
I had a great conversation with Mike backstage at Canada Day, and there was no cameras, nothing recording. And that was just one of my favorite bits from that day. It was just sat on the sofa, just him telling me stories about tour life and how just grateful he was to feel included with the young guys today backstage and
Yeah,
at
right.
Trafalgar Square. And he said his first gig actually was playing Trafalgar Square, I think he told me. And he's like, it's like full circle that he was there at this time in his life on
Yeah,
stage again.
he has a real sense of humanity. And I think he's just a brilliant human being. And I love that whenever I fall on my feet or, or on my knees, that when I get up, there's somebody really lovely there. And that's, it's always been, no, knock on wood, maybe it's the last part of my name because my last name used to be Haraluk, right? I'm half Ukrainian and half English, Austrian, and Cree Indian, or half, whatever you want to call it. Uh, but that when I became an actor, I thought, oh, nobody can pronounce Haraluk, it's really hard. And a friend of mine from New York doing I was playing the Artful Dodger in Oliver, and my friend was playing Fagin. And we used to do acting coaching moments because he thought I was a terrible actor. And he was great, Philip Hoffman. If it wasn't for him, he said, "What about your name, dude?" He said, "You have to change your name." He said, "Nobody can pronounce it." I was like, "What would I change it to?" He goes, "How about Howard? Just cut the luck off." But that luck has come with me everywhere I've gone. People think they're like, "Wait, how do you have all these horseshoes up your ass?" For lack of better terminology. But I kind of seem to do. Because I think also it starts with belief as well. Belief that there are people listening. Belief that there is something worth sharing. Belief that you have the ability to bring people to a different place or make them feel different about their humanity, about their life. And it's such a privilege. Like that's what I loved about the Phantom, and that's what I love about every story is that my job is to bring the humanity and connect to people. And it's people always ask, what's it like to do 8 shows a week? Or how do you do with a long tour? It's a different audience, right?
Yeah.
It's not the
Yeah.
same audience. It was the same audience every night. It'd be a bit of a problem. But even that's kind of nice having some people come back because then they really want to see it again because they're so attached to it. So it makes my job easy. It doesn't make it, the nerves are always there, but the privilege is, all mine to
Do
be entertaining.
you prefer the moving parts of a tour, or do you prefer to be every night in the theater? You know what's happening.
Glib. I mean, I do like them both. Living out of a suitcase, I don't live poorly out of a suitcase. I mean, we go on tour, we stay in really nice hotels, we stay in really nice tour buses, we've got a really lovely crew. I mean, I cannot complain. The food's great, but I've seen the other side of it. I've seen living out of a van. I've seen doing your own, setting up all your own stuff, taking the drum kit up flights of stairs, the troubadour, setting up in a tiny, postage stamp area, and they're all really part of it. But and staying, like having a room, like when I did the Phantom, I remember being in the room and going, this is the room where Michael Crawford created this role. He stayed in here but this is not just his room. It's Sir Laurence Olivier's room. It's where he used to rent out the room to live in the West End. He didn't just, do shows there. He's like, I'm going to rent a place. Can I rent this room here? And he stayed there. So I said to everybody in the whole Phantom kind of company, front of house, band, said, guys, if you haven't seen this room yet, you got to come up and hang out. And so I used to I put a whole whack of booze right in the very back. And I said, if you come in, the drinks are free. It's a free bar. It's like I called it the rider. And I basically do that with all my shows is I'll put a bunch of free drinks and I said, if anybody wants to come around, not during the show, but afterwards, right? And you want to have a drink before you go to the pub, that's my gift to you. Sit around and talk. And it was amazing. Sometimes we'd have such a cool collection of people in that room. But I thought, just so they knew, they got to be in Sir Laurence Olivier's bedroom,
Yeah.
effectively. Or, and I was like, this is your moment, and I mean, I did get called up by stage management who basically said, at one point they said, you're not really supposed to have all that in the room. And I said, well, it's free and it's not for during the show. And then about 2 weeks later, they were in the room as well.
Of course.
We're not supposed to have it, but make me a martini. You know what I mean? Like, I'll have a Cosmopolitan. Thank you. It's in the fridge.
What's the most important bit of theater that you brought to your touring with the band?
I think just rather than being stagey or try to do something, just to be you. Just to sing it plainly, not plainly, but you don't have to be so big. What you have to be is real. So that means no tricks. That means no, and this is the part where I pour it on. It means going with whatever the room is giving you at the moment, what the guys in the band are giving you at the moment, and making sure that you don't lose that quality, that spark, that little twinkle in your eye. And
Yeah.
that's my job because I'm the only guy in the band who doesn't have an instrument in front of them. My only instrument is my microphone. It's my job to kind of unite the band. So I get to go over to people and play with them a little bit and it really makes us a unit. If I just stood there and shot it forward and didn't do that, I think people would tend to let everything would kind of go backwards, and it seemed a little bit like greedy. And that's not my job. My job is to kind of connect us all together. And in a bigger sense, that's my job to do as as an actor, as a performer, an entertainer, maybe, or storyteller, whatever you want to say. Is that my job is to include us all, to remind us that we're all there at that one moment, and that it could go either way. And if it does, isn't that fun? Because we got to witness the one moment together,
Yeah.
right? I remember seeing performances like that when I was a kid. My mom used to take me to see the theaters. One of the best things she ever did was get like subscription to the Rice Theater at the Citadel Theater in Edmonton. So we'd go see all these new shows and young Canadian actors just kind of cutting their mustard, right? And I saw Eric Peterson there. I saw, like amazing shows. I remember seeing Michel Tremblay's Hosanna, and I was like, what, 8? And I'm like, Mom, what's a transvestite? Like, this person's got a beard, but it looks like Cleopatra. But it fundamentally changed the way I looked at theater and storytelling, seeing people who really wanted to convey something and that kind of never left me because the people did affect me. I can still remember Hosanna, and years later, I always wanted to do Bonjour, Bonjour, Michel Tremblay's kind of opus about the breakup of Canada. It's a metaphor for Canada's family. Years later, it gave me such a high respect of these things, and wanting to just be able to be part of that storytelling that's what I love about being on stage. And part of being on stage with the mechanics is understanding what it is we've got each day, being okay with that. Sometimes it's not always fun. There are times when we're in moods or something's going off backstage, and you've got to kind of clear it up, but you can pour a different bit of that you into that song, and that can wake it up and make it alive. And the audiences are just great. Like we've just gone from strength to strength, and I didn't know what to expect there with being with an established band that I was a fan of, years ago. But they're really great, great people, and I like the opportunity to do that. Yeah, it's all. I guess I sound like I'm mushing it all together, but it is just about being in the moment. That sounds fairly glib, but it really is that.
Do you feel a responsibility when singing songs that people are attached memories to?
Of course, yeah, like it's big. You see people crying when Living Years is going on because it's a story about healing with your and not healing, just existing and being honest. And, even so, if you do have that kind of, in some ways, people have given you that power, it's your opportunity to take that and make it into as good a thing, or just hold it rather than try to make something out of it, just to hold it and to be okay with it, be with them. It sounds a bit like a, counseling session, but it's not. It's kind of like a larger version of it. And, I remember going to Kate Bush. I've been wearing the shirt because I'm a huge fan, right? I'll tell you a story about Kate Bush in a bit, or if we go back to, if we get a chance to, but I remember sobbing openly at the gig. And yes, I was a bit drunk at the moment, but I thought I'd never see Kate Bush perform in my life. And there she was right in front of me, and not in front of me, in front of an audience. And I got tickets to the last performance in the middle row, and I remember going, this is a dream come true. This is something since I was in high school that I thought would never come true. And it's just so you got to, so that moment might be happening for you when you're up there. This is the moment come true. And so that is such a wonderful place to be in, and yes, there's pressure, but is that a great pressure? Come on. Like people just want to love, they want to have a great time, and you get to give them a good time. Like
Yeah.
it's the,
Yeah. What's
I,
the difference between singing for an audience and singing with them?
oh boy. I think singing with them is more exciting. Singing for them is great because you get that, but it seems like, okay, that there's going to be a reveal of, now here's my big moment, here's where I'm going to wow you. Where singing with an audience is like, let's all wow each other, And when you get 80,000 people swaying and singing, it's incredible. It's like, it's one of the best feelings. Having been in the audience in those moments as well, it is a great feeling.
Yeah, it's
Look
just
around you and go, you know what? I don't care what you look like. We all sound great, right? Even if you sound bad, we sound great.
and everybody's connected.
Everybody's connected. And isn't that the truth of life, So we can't see air, but eagles can see air. So what's our problem?
That's
You know,
right. That's right.
like eagles can see air. So our eyes are terrible compared to eagles, right? And so let's, just know that just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And we are all connected.
What version of yourself do you see when you look back at the beginning of your career?
I like how I started my career in some ways. I think less, I guess I was less confident, but I knew I had something to give. And that's the right way. Giving is the right way. I knew I had something to give. It's not like I wanted to, and now I'll show you what it's all about. It was like, let me just have this moment and I'll try and make this moment something better, than we've both imagined. And thank God I've had people who've been in that same kind of that same way because they've imagined it a certain way, you've imagined it a certain way, and you get together and you get to hopefully take it to a place you both didn't know it could go. And I remember doing it. I did a show years ago called Anything That Moves with Anne Marie McDonald and Alyssa Palmer, who was her partner, and it was I think it was at the Tarragon Theater, and it was and Alan Cole, who's fantastic jazz guy. And we got on like a house on fire, probably too good. We got in a bit of trouble. We used to go out after the show singing until the wee hours. But I remember that show doing it and and them saying, "Oh, this has gone in a completely different way. This is and me going, this is lovely. I love how this is." And that was my kind of farewell to Toronto because that's just after that I left for England and never really came back. But I remember doing that and going, okay, I get it now. I get this sense of collaboration can be bigger. And it wasn't just me, it was with other characters in the show that, my buddy George Maswell was playing my dad in the show and Wong Kyorn was playing this fabulous lawyer and my best friend, but quite gregarious and all that. And it was really it was an interesting setup to see the play as it was and then to see where it went and everybody being fairly happy with it at the end, and I thought that's what more I want to do more stuff like this. And
Do
that's what luckily I have.
Is there one dream project that you have in the back of your mind that you want to do that you haven't done yet?
But I haven't done yet that well, I tend to release things because I don't want to be no, and that doesn't mean that you can't dream about stuff, but like there was that moment of me going, "Oh, I'd love to play." This is why I got the beard because I mean Jean Valjean, I hate beards. I like I'm not doing anything. I'm not pondering. There's no intelligence increasing up here. It's just me, getting more picky. But yeah, I'd like to do that, but then part of me goes, it'd be lovely to do a show with all my family in it. I got weird hair there. Look at that. Okay, anyway, there, it's even weirder. So yeah, it's just going on about having a gig with my family.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice to get everybody together and just go, it's come full circle, that we're just making music like we used to do. And, I remember my brother's a country western singer in Canada called Jess Lee. And he's tremendous, very talented, very much like everybody compares him to Merle Haggard and kind of Lefty Frizzell and things like that. He's very traditional, but we used to get together when the family get together. And I was very little at the moment because my older brothers and sisters are about 20 years older than I am, and they'd all be jamming, and I would just kind of sing along and and it'd be nice to have that again, to do that or to pass it on to a new generation or whatever.
I was going to say, I love anyone who's not following your social media should, because as seeing your son grow up, living his best tour life is the most amazing thing to watch.
Dude, oh, that's really cute. Well, she's very social media active, and very good at it. And he, I don't want to force him into anything, but when he was a baby, he did a show in the West End. I was playing the Phantom and he did not Contempt. It's called, oh, he did it. Anyway, he had to play a baby in a show and he made 2.5 grand.
Yeah.
I remember he was at the Neil Simon. Was it not Contempt? What was it called? It's killing me. This is called The Beginning of Alzheimer's. And I'm sorry to even joke about that. But yeah, and I remember going over and sometimes in between shows, my wife was like, come give me a break. And so I'd run off over there and give her a break and then I'd go off and play the Phantom because they're right across the street.
Wild.
I thought, isn't this weird? He's doing a show at the National and I've been trying for years to do a show at the National and haven't quite cracked it.
He's living his best life. I love that.
We just put him on tape for another show, and his agent got back to him and said, "I really love his tape to interview people for a new animated movie that's coming out." But the people who were involved in the movie, I was like, "Oh my god, if he gets this, he'll be like interviewing some giant stars."
Amazing.
It's all
Look at him
it's all
go.
fun, isn't it?
It is. It is.
As long as it's fun, I'm cool with it. And if he starts to go, this is too much pressure, then we pull him. Obviously, it's not because that's not a childhood, and my
Yeah.
job is to protect his childhood. That's your job because you only get one crack at it for 18 years, then it's over.
Exactly. Exactly. I like to end my conversation with some quick fire questions.
Hit it, man.
Let's go for it. First song you sing in the shower.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Be My Baby. Ronettes. Yeah.
Stage shoes or comfy sneakers?
Oh, comfy sneakers all the time. Of course, comfy sneakers. You can still put, diamonds on those, right?
Of course, I do. Yeah.
Comfy sneakers.
Song that instantly takes you back in time.
Uh, mm, Instantly takes me back in time. Can I name two?
Yeah.
Well, please, please, please let me get what I want from the Smiths and Dream of Sheep by Kate Bush.
Worst lyric you've ever forgotten mid performance.
Oh my God. Okay, I think it's from Miss Saigon, and it's via Chris sings it. It's like, I could be in the sack with what it cost me to buy a Big Mac, something like that. And I think they've cut that from Miss Saigon, having seen it recently. But it was a Big Mac line, and I thought, and I love Alain Boublil, I love him, and Claude Michel Schomburg. I really love, like, I got to work with them and be with them, and they're such passionate people. And Richard Maltby as well. I mean, I love, is such a darling man. But that line, everybody was like, really? Come on, right?
If your voice had a superpower, what would it be?
Voice had a superpower? What would it be? Boy, just okay, spread joy. That's it. Just to spread joy, making people feel better. And in some ways, I'm very lucky because I know my voice. I've had two hemorrhages in my vocal cord. I sing with a vocal polyp now, but all my doctors in Canada and the UK and New York, they all said the same thing. They all went to school together, so they're all like, "It's fine, you're okay." So I like how it changes. I don't, look at Joni Mitchell. Still, thank God she's alive, but still, you know, what a voice
Yeah.
from A to Z. It's unbelievable, but still singing. And that's the reason why, because it's not about the voice. It's about you human beings singing to other human beings, whatever you got. So I think I'm grateful for what I've got.
Exactly. Most rock star thing you've ever done by accident.
Most rock star thing I've ever done by accident. This is so odd. I think you can see it on social media. So I'm backstage, right? And we're in our little dressing room. And you remember how people flip bottles?
Yep.
It's flipping on bottles. So and everybody else takes the mick out of me to makes fun of me because I do enjoy an energy drink. Okay. I'm not going to say which brand, but I was using a particular brand that is a fantastic brand who sponsors Formula One. Anyway, I was using this brand and we're backstage in Germany and I was trying to flip a bottle of water on top of the bottle, right? So the first one was a big can and I did it. And I was like, and then I went back to that theater 3 years later to do the same gig. And I took a smaller bottle of that energy drink and flipped the water on top of that. And I was like, that's rock star. I'm sitting here, taking our drinks from the outside of the fridge that we're going to enjoy later and, playing with them with disregard. Also, we used to do a couple things. Like I remember did a show called Rock of Ages here. I was playing Stacey Jackson. We'd be in the back and we got bored in this little room that was in the back of this new theater we moved into. So we just thought we'd just do games. So I took a coat hanger off and I was like, I'm going to throw that coat hanger and get it onto that rail. And by 6 months later, all of us were doing it. And we were doing multiple rotations of this hanger. We must have broke about 100 hangers, right? And wardrobe got so mad at me. They're like, Tim Howard, if you break any more of it. But we were all throwing that and it would go on. I felt like a superhero. And then people would go, remember there's a show on? We're like, oh, yeah, of course, the show.
Favorite gift you've ever received from a fan?
Oh, my goodness. Okay, I still have it. Well, it's not favorite, but I'll say it's up on the top. I got a robe from the Dorchester from Rod Stewart and Arnold Stiefel, who was producing. And Arnold's like, he came into my room and I was wearing a kimono I bought in LA. He's like, that kimono is so drab, honey. We've got to get you a better robe. And the next day he walks in, he's like, I took it from Rod's room. I was like, where's Rod staying? He's like, oh, he's got the Dorchester for 2 months. He's at the penthouse. I was like, all right, I'll take that. I still have it. I was like, and Rod's like, you took my robe.
Who's more dramatic, actors or musicians?
Well, having been one of each, like oh, Jesus. This is going to be hard. I'd have to say musos. Musicians, I'd say because nobody flips out like a musician. I mean, when it goes wrong, because they kind of, everything's good. And then it's like, and they go crazy and like, and it could be over a teeny thing, but it's super important to them. And they're trying to keep it in so so that nobody notices, but they really do care so much that when it flips, it flips. And I've seen actors being able to be talked down, whereas musicians, I've seen them start fights.
Mic stand or roam free?
I do like a mic stand trick, but there are people who outdo me all over the place. Like, you can't watch Little Richard or who's the guy from Free, Paul. Anyway, that's who comes to me the name. Anyways, I'm Paul Rogers. You watch those guys do mic tricks, like insane. So I go roam free because then I can get to the audience a little bit. Plus, usually I've got a wireless now, so it's a Shure SM58, but it's a wireless one, and so I get a chance to go into the audience, and sometimes I can break that wall. And people really, in rock, you can do that. When our audience is fairly safe, and but it's still nice to do that with a bigger audience, to go into something like Isle of Wight Festival, and you're like, I'm going to jump.
Yeah.
I'm off stage, and you see bodyguards come around. You're like, and then they go, yeah. And the worst part is if you do stick out a mic and they take it, and you're like, I've got to get that back. Who's this? And it just keeps going around. You're like, everybody's having a go. And I've had those moments as well, which are, the band doesn't like it so much when you're looking around. They're going, no, 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 no. But it makes it really fun. So I go with handheld as no mic stand.
And finally, finish this sentence. The best part of being Tim Hauer is.
The best part about being is this is very kind of you. The best part of Tim Hauer is the fun.
Yeah.
It's not always planned. In fact, I'm known as being a fairly chaotic human being. I'm kind of, I'm trying to rail it in a bit, but I have had heaps of fun doing all the shows I've ever done. We've always had a good time, regardless of whether it was like stage Polaris and the Snow Queen or whatever, or playing a dancing, like a dancing crow, a big crowfoot, doing that from that all the way through to, the Phantom or whatever else is on there. I tend to bring a sense of joy to the production, and I want that. And there have been moments of combat too, where I've said the wrong thing or whatever, but there's a lot of healing to be had, and sometimes a closer connection from that. So more often than not, just the fun. We just had a lot of fun in most shows I've ever been in. I can name you 10 things that are just hilarious.
You do bring the fun, because no matter whenever we're at the same event, wherever the noise is coming from, where people are laughing and having a great time, that's where we can find Tim.
Oh, thank you. Well, you're always included. You're in the hair group, man. I just think you're an ace human being.